Just a few matters as I make introduction here to talk to you about. If anybody had wanted to get one of the church bulletins, we are still producing those. I did not know how many to make. I don't know how many of you all noticed that they were still out there by the front desk that you could pick one up. Should have folded some and put them over by this entrance too, but regardless of that, they are available out there if you want one of those or one of the prayer lists. Of course, I've been trying to send out the prayer list digitally as well. Also, it is not only good to see you all this morning, but also to note that there are things that are a little different from what they were before. And no, I'm not referring to the every other pew type situation. I had noticed in looking back on the live stream for the Wednesday night Bible study that it was the last time before I was able to go back to the barber. And so I had everything just kind of slicked back. I looked at myself and I thought, they might wonder, has the preacher been replaced by one of the greasers from the old Sha-Na-Na TV show? I thought that that's basically what it looked like. No, Bowser is not your preacher now, but instead Tim just had not had opportunity to go over by the barber yet. I know it was really bothering Brother Alvin Allen. He wanted to go to the barber so bad, yes, and they took care of him. That's great. All right, so we also want to take note this morning that in the midst of all the stuff going on, you want to try to be just as normal as possible. You want to be able to get things done just as normal as you can. Nevertheless, the services are a little bit different in procedure. The number of people participating a little bit less in the sense of how we do the Lord's Supper. Didn't have a reader this morning, things like that. However, these things will, if everything keeps on going and with the Lord's blessings, gradually change over. So we appreciate your patience along that line. And as far as any church activities or anything, just try to stay in touch with the brethren and all the announcements that we are making, and we will try to communicate everything that we're up to just as as quickly and as much as we possibly can. If you're not on the church email list, please let me know about that. Send me that email list. You can call and tell it to us, whatever. We'll get you in on that so that you know what's going on that way as well. If you're not into the electronic stuff as much, just please keep an open line of communication. Give a phone call anytime you would like over at the office, and we will answer any of your questions at all. Also, we of course want you to know that different works of the church continue. You all have been doing a great job with respect to keeping the food pantry stocked and everything, and just really done a bang-up job with that, and we appreciate that so very much. Had plenty of ability to tell anybody that has called us and said, hey, I got a little issue here, we could use some food, and we're just right on that. And that's only because you've been so kind to keep us stocked on that. You've been coming, and as you pick up some of the Lord's Supper communion supplies, you go ahead and drop some food off and everything, and that's been working out very well. One other thing I had said, I had asked some of you all if you were able to pick up on a Southern Hick type expression or something I had done that was ungrammatical in my PowerPoint slides from the Wednesday night presentation. And the fact of the matter is that I say so many of those things that I got 3 different guesses from the Grissams, and all of them were correct, but all of them were none of them that I was looking for, not a one of them. So I figured 3 strikes and you're out. Some did guess it correctly. The fact of the matter is, it was on toward the last slide where I said yourself, where I was talking to about people and what they're doing. Should have said yourself. But anyway, the fact of the matter is that if you got that correct, I said you would get a prize. Your prize is you get to stay a few minutes after today and help us disinfect. Wow, what a prize. I think that's great. You'll receive a blessing for doing so, and it's what you always wanted to do anyway. So there you go. Okay, I would like this morning for us to think about a few things in connection with not only the occasion of the day, as much as is possible, probably Mama's favorite drive-through or something like that you might be going to, but whatever it is that she prefers for this day, people are all over the place thinking about Mama. And that's just natural. Why? Because what happened with Mama stuck with you. Right? I mean, what happened with maybe a friend of yours in school? Well, you lost track of them a long time ago and you never really think much about that. What happened with some incident, past boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the case is, maybe that didn't stick with you and you've moved on to somebody else. But whatever you picked up from Mama, that stuck with you. In Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 6, everybody knows about the proverb from our Lord, where he mentions to us that if you train up a child in the way that he should go, when he is old, he shall not depart from it. That does not mean, as a proverb, of course, and preachers go on and on about this, that the child is going to be a perfect child or a full reflection of whatever mama wanted. Nevertheless, at the same time, the passage does indicate that the influence of the parents stick with you. And it's something that even if you go afar from that, you stray from it, you come back to the teachings of your parents later on in life if God blesses you with later life. And it's that element of, I remember that. I remember some incidents and things that were earlier in my life, and they have molded me and made me what I am today, and I need to get back to those teachings. I need to get back to those things that I was raised to be. Folks, we got to do that kind of thing. If you don't, you never learn the lessons of childhood. Things that, like I said, after a while maybe we stray from as people sow their wild oats, if you will, but things that you can come back to and say, I should have learned better from mama. I know that looking back on my own life, I'm not sure. My sister was a little older. Maybe she was already in school. But I don't really remember her in those early memories where mama would drag us over to like an old clothing store. Not sure what it was. Did it have Cato's back then? I don't know. But anyway, it was some old clothing store. And she would also take us over to like the dime store. And I can kind of remember the dime store a little better because the little baby chicks they would sell in the front of it. Some of y'all that are older here might remember that. Those of you who are younger, you're like, man, is he old? He's an older preacher than I thought he was. Well, they used to do that, and it was a real neat thing to see. Anyway, over at the dime store, you know, there were a few things to see, but if it was just a regular clothing store, there wasn't much to do. And me and my brother, we would be there and we'd tell Mama, my legs are killing me. Well, it didn't matter. She was going to shop until she had gotten what we needed. So we learned how to get in and amongst the different circular clothing racks and kind of hide in there and dart in and out and get in trouble and all that kind of stuff. You say, well, Tim, why would that stick with you? It stuck with me because the things that we were picking up from on that occasion were actually teaching us lessons that no doubt she wasn't even thinking of at the time. Mama's looking for a good bargain because she had these 3 young'uns and she's got to get these 2 boys dressed in something, and so she has to shop around to find a good deal. But from our perspective, it was teaching us, number one, it's not all about you. Mama, you'll get to go when Mama's done, right? And until she's done, it doesn't matter if your growing legs are experiencing every growing pain you thought they ever could feel, and you just think you're about to die because there's nothing to play with because all you see is a bunch of jeans hanging from a rack. No, none of that matters. What matters is something needed to be done, and that's the way it's going to be. It also is something that later on sticks with you because the memory of it causes you to realize how much was invested in your upbringing, right? How much somebody poured in to what you experienced and what they were doing to prepare for you to be ready, to be sheltered, to be clothed, to be fed. Another thing, when I was younger, we was growing up, I thought that white rice and biscuits was the breakfast of champions. And I kid you not. And I love that to this very day. You just can't hardly beat a bowl of white rice. I've always thought so. Did I know or appreciate back then that Mama was able to feed us for pocket change because you could get a big old sack of rice, you know, and flour for very little? No. But the fact of the matter is I thought, now there is a meal. You know, I can go off to school or wherever or be able to face the day, and I'm just fine, and I really like that. I've got all my carbs and I am good to go. I didn't even know what a carb was, of course. But we were ready after our white rice and maybe if we had it then a biscuit. And that was just a good deal. Why would that stick with me? Because I look back on that and we were eating just plain food, and those were the best of times, weren't they? The very best of times. And you ask yourself, why do those things stick with you? Those things stuck with me because they molded and made me somebody that I believe is more appreciative of anything that's put in front of me nowadays. Why do I appreciate that? Because pretty much everything compared to say that is going to be fancy type food. And I really like the plain stuff, but you know, the other stuff is fine too. Everything like that made an impression upon you when you were younger. Mom and Dad did not necessarily know it, but the impressions were being made, and it caused you to become the person that you are today, to get the attitudes that you have, to have the patience that you have. Everybody is a product of both their raising and the personal decisions that you have made along the way. We would like for our personal decisions to reflect more than just a few cultural traditions. We would also like those personal decisions to reflect important spiritual decisions. Listen to this. In 2 Timothy and in chapter 1 and verse 5, everybody knows about what Paul told Timothy. He told him that the same faith which he had observed in his grandmother Lois and his mother Eunice, he was persuaded also existed in Timothy. 2 Timothy 1:5. In this passage in 2 Timothy, what you see is the Apostle Paul showing it passes on down. And Timothy by this time is approaching maybe 30 years of age, something like that. We don't know exactly. But as Timothy is 30, maybe been older than that, up toward 40 years old. Paul was somewhat older by that time, of course, in 2 Timothy. And as he is talking to this younger minister, he is explaining to him where he got his faith from. It wasn't something that all of a sudden Timothy was like, oh, well, I need to change the course of my family. No, it had already been in his family. Now, exactly how did his mom come by that faith? Well, no doubt because he's given the chain in 2 Timothy 1:5. It comes from the grandma. Where does the grandma get that faith? I'm not sure. It could have been that these Jewish women had, outside of their control, been tied in with a Gentile family and had one of those arranged marriage situations. May have been for both of them. Could have been especially for his mama. She was married to a Greek. I don't know. We're not told the background. But we do know that she retained faith, didn't she? She retained faith. And that mama's faith has led to the salvation of untold number of people through the work of Timothy, the student of the Apostle Paul. You just never know the influence that is going to be passed down. That stuck with Timothy, just like it stuck with Eunice, just like it stuck with Lois, and the traditions of the Jews that had been given unto her. Every person reflects that in their life. Now, you can choose to reject it. You can choose to say, I'll go out here and sow my wild oats and I'll do whatever I want. Yeah, but if God blesses you with time, later on you'll see. You'll see. That's not the smart way to be. I'm going to go back to the way I was raised. I'm going to go back to what Mama would have wanted me to be. And Paul tells Timothy, you got that same kind of faith. You keep your faith in God, and everything will work out very well. That's the basic message, and certainly that's the kind of thing we ought to do as well in our life. And then we've got in the Bible a passage in the book of Hebrews I was fascinated with, in Hebrews chapter 13. I wanted to talk to you about things that stay with you, things you come back to. And in mentioning these things that abide, the things that stick with you, the unchanging nature of God, and the fact that the Lord will be with us later on, even after we have, quote, sown our wild oats, unquote, or some other kind of thing to go away from Him. God has always been there. He's the standard. He is the unmovable part. And God says, I'll be here waiting for you when you decide to come back. And so the Lord wanted people to understand in life, if something comes up against you, it cannot compete with me, and you need to come back to me. God wanted people to understand, if you get dissatisfied, then you need to know God's way is the only thing that will give true fulfillment and satisfaction. You need to come back to me. That's why it says in Hebrews 13 and verse 5, in the earlier part of the verse, let your conversation, this means your manner of life in the New Testament, your conversation be without covetousness. And be content, you see, here's the key, be content with such things as you have. Well, why? Why should I be that way? The Hebrew writer says, for He has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. This expression, He has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you, is an expression that comes from the Old Testament. And it's not just one single passage. The gist of what he said here comes from many different references, but the original one, which says pretty much exactly this, is in Deuteronomy chapter 31 and verse 6. In Deuteronomy 31 verse 6, God wants them to know, your enemies, the people that are trying to bring you down, I'm not going to let my people be brought down. I will never leave you. I won't forsake you, God says. I'm here for you. The example he uses in Hebrews is that if you are content, Lord, I'm satisfied with what I got. Well, how can you be satisfied in this life? Because we're here for a little while and then you're gone. I mean, while you're here, you might as well eat, drink, and party, whatever, for tomorrow we die, was the attitude of the world. But a Christian had a different outlook on it. He was like, no, no, no. I'm in this for the long haul. I'm in this for eternity. And I am in this to listen to what my God has for me, because His blessings will always be. He will stick with me. I cannot forsake Him, because He will not leave me. Therefore, in Hebrews, he's referring to the content nature of a Christian, and everything that you have is an expression of what you can use for His glory. Everything that you have is a blessing that you have received, not by your own power and might, but because God wishes you to use it for good. Everything that you possess is something that God has wanted you to have and to use throughout your life for good. God is always waiting upon you. He's always giving you these second chances. God is not going anywhere, so He says, I will never leave you. I will not forsake you. I'm here for you. Somebody says, well, where's God and all this stuff with this sickness and the virus and such? God didn't move, my friend. We are not here upon this earth as our permanent home. We're waiting for the city of God, established by Him. We're waiting just like Abraham was, in days in which there were many plagues and earthquakes and natural disasters, as they call it. Did those people turn on the Lord and say, where is God during the time of the earthquake? Did those people turn on the Lord and say, where is God in the time of the pestilence? Did those people turn on the Lord and say, where is God in the time of the leprosy? No. Instead, they said, Lord, what is the best thing we can do to overcome? And God says, I'm here for you. And He guided His people Israel, and He guided the patriarchs, and He will guide you through the will of Jesus Christ, because His will remains. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. It sticks with us. God says that's not going to change, and it's not going anywhere. It's forever going to be there. God says it doesn't matter what comes up against you. The old enemies back in the book of Deuteronomy, He said, don't be afraid of man. I am with you. I'll make sure my promises are fulfilled. And God tells us today, I will save your soul, and I'll let you use your talents to serve me. Don't ever fear, because the Lord is with us. Nothing can stand against us. Be wise, but at the same time understand that you are assured of coming out on top if you stay on the side of Jesus Christ. Nothing can touch you. What do you mean nothing can touch you? I will be content with such things as I have from God. I'm here on this earth for a little while. I have to leave somehow, but when I go, let me be found on the side of Jesus Christ, because the captain of my salvation will be waiting with open arms to receive me always. Just as He has always taken care of me in this life, He will take care of me forever. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. What a beautiful reassurance from Hebrews 13 and verse 5. What a beautiful expression that was evidently popular among the Jews and became almost a proverb among them, if not just a common expression, beginning back in Deuteronomy 31 and continuing through the Old Testament. I want to finish out with an example, not to embarrass anybody here, so I'll use a historical figure. There was a man that lived a long life, especially for back then. Around in the middle of the 2nd century, is when he passed on. The church wasn't even legal. And his name was Polycarp. Polycarp lived to, as near as anybody can figure, around 90 years of age or so. Polycarp was somebody who was determined, if I've served God for this long, I'm not going to stop now. I'm not sure exactly what brought it on. But the Roman authorities finally decided, we got to do something about this. Too many Christians? Got to make an example of somebody. The crowds demand blood. They want to see a spectacle. And the Romans were awful about using humans as a spectacle for the entertainment of others, even their pain and their demise. They hauled Polycarp in front of the proconsul. He was threatened with martyrdom. We're going to kill you. And you'll be killed publicly out in front of these people. And that's going to be the end of you, old boy. But it doesn't have to be. Just admit to the magnificence of Caesar. Renounce this so-called religion or whoever this King Jesus is. We'll let you go. In whatever way they put it to him, Polycarp said, no, I'm not going to do that. He said, why are you waiting? Bring it. Bring it on. I've served him all these years. I'm not going to deny him now. In what way had he served the Lord? Traditionally, he was an elder in the church over in what is now called Turkey. After having served God for many years, Polycarp had written some things. Some of those writings have fallen to us by tradition to this very day. The writings of Polycarp detailed a lot of different quotes he got from the Apostle Paul. He was a big fan of Paul's writings, and so he would make a lot of quotes from Paul. At some point earlier in life, no doubt Polycarp had come across a passage like Romans chapter 6. Well, what would he have read in Romans 6? That a person should not continue in sin, but certainly that they should reflect upon the fact that they were baptized into Jesus Christ, and that when they were baptized into Christ, they were baptized into His death. Oh, so as you read there beginning in Romans 6 and verse 3, you understand the significance of it. If I have been planted together in the likeness of His death, so shall I also be in the likeness of His resurrection, down through Romans 6 verse 5. Oh, I should respond to what God has said. This wise man has given the inspired words of the Lord, that I should be baptized into the death of Christ, that I should die to the ways of the world, that I should totally commit myself unto Him, that I should forsake the ways of sin forever, and not use grace as a cloak for me going out here and living any old way I want, but that I should commit myself to Him who will judge faithfully, and that I should stick with Him no matter what. So after many different decades of having served God in His church, when the time came for them to say, old man, you give it up, his response was, never, never. You want to burn me at the stake? You want to feed me to the lions? You want to put me to the sword? Whatever you want to do to me, I shall not fear man. He knew the Lord will never forsake me, and so He wasn't going to forsake him. Every decision that we make in life early on molds us and makes us a person of commitment. It makes us somebody that the Lord can rely upon in hard times to serve Him and to show forth a Christian example. Don't you want to be like some of those great examples of old? Somebody who says, I will stick with God no matter what. Nobody's threatening to burn me at the stake, or you. Nobody's threatening us in that fashion. But we do have trials. We do have tribulations. And in these trials and tribulations, you've got to think back. What would make the Lord proud of me? What would be right by my upbringing? To make a promise to God and stick with it? Or instead to just be kind of a on-again, off-again Christian? You know it's much better to make a commitment unto God and to stick with it. If you have called upon Jesus Christ, then that's great. You look forward to heaven. Never forsake Him, because He'll never forsake you. If you have never become a New Testament Christian, do you not wish to take advantage of all these second chances? You know what you were raised to be. Somebody of honesty, somebody of industriousness and integrity. You know that it would make everybody proud, beginning with God and the angels Himself. If you would just become a Christian this morning, you know it's a good thing, so why not do it? Come to the Lord, and we can assist you. You can become a Christian at any time in life. What better time then, while He gives you time and opportunity, right now at church? If there's somebody who's listening to this, you know you need to come to the Lord today. Today is your day of salvation. Why wait any longer? Just realize that God hasn't promised you tomorrow. It's today. And today He says, if you will hear His voice, then He'll bless you. He says His yoke is easy, His burden is light. He'll be here for you. He's not going to lay more upon you than you can handle, but He is going to demand of you that you humble yourself before Him in gospel obedience. Won't you think about that and come to Jesus Christ as we stand and sing?